The year was 1300, and the city of Paris was a bustling, chaotic hub of artistic and intellectual ferment. Amid the narrow, winding streets, the air was thick with the scent of freshly baked bread and the clatter of wooden wheels on cobblestones. But beneath this vibrant surface, a quiet revolution was brewing. In the heart of this city, a manuscript was being written that would challenge the very foundations of medieval thought. Guillaume de Lorris, a young and ambitious scribe, was meticulously crafting a poem that would become known as Le Roman de la Rose. This was no ordinary love story. It was a deep, philosophical exploration of desire, perception, and the nature of the soul. As Guillaume wrote, he was grappling with questions that had puzzled thinkers for centuries. What is the essence of love? How do we perceive the world around us? And what role does the imagination play in shaping our reality? In the opening lines of Le Roman de la Rose, Guillaume sets the stage with a vivid image of a garden, a place of beauty and enchantment. But this garden is not just a physical space. It is a metaphor for the complex interplay between the senses and the mind. The protagonist, the lover, enters this garden and is immediately captivated by the beauty of a rose, a symbol of the beloved. As he gazes upon the rose, he becomes lost in a world of his own creation, a world where the boundaries between the real and the imagined blur. This idea of the imagination as a powerful force in shaping our perceptions was not unique to Guillaume. It was a concept that had roots in the works of ancient philosophers like Aristotle, whose ideas about the soul and perception had been passed down through the centuries. Aristotle believed that the soul, or psyche, was the essence of life, and that perception was a dynamic process where the external world was internalized and transformed by the mind. This concept of the psyche as an active, creative force was deeply influential in medieval thought. One of the key figures in this intellectual lineage was Thomas Aquinas, a theologian and philosopher who wrote extensively on the nature of the soul and perception. Aquinas' ideas, which he developed in his commentary on Aristotle's De Anima, were particularly relevant to Guillaume's work. Aquinas argued that the imagination played a crucial role in mediating between the external world and the mind. When we perceive something, our senses receive an image or phantasma, which is then processed by the imagination. This process is not passive. It is a creative act that involves the transformation of raw sensory data into a meaningful experience. In Le Roman de la Rose, Guillaume explores this idea through the character of Oisius, the Lady of Leisure, who represents the imaginative faculty. Oisius holds a mirror, a symbol of reflection and self-awareness. The mirror is a powerful metaphor for the way in which the imagination reflects and refracts the external world, creating a new internal reality. When the lover sees his reflection in Oisius's mirror, he is confronted with a version of himself that is both familiar and strange. This moment of self-reflection is a turning point in the poem, marking the transition from the external world of the garden to the internal world of the mind. The mirror also serves as a metaphor for the way in which art and literature reflect and shape our perceptions. Just as a mirror captures and transforms the image of the viewer, so too does the poem capture and transform the reader's experience. In this sense, Le Roman de la Rose is not just a story. It is an act of creation, a mirror that reflects the reader's own imagination back to them. As Guillaume's poem unfolds, it becomes clear that the garden is not just a place of beauty, but a place of transformation. The lover's journey through the garden is a journey of self-discovery, a journey that challenges the boundaries between the real and the imagined. This theme of transformation is echoed in the works of other medieval thinkers, such as the philosophers and theologians who grappled with the nature of change and the persistence of identity. One of the most influential of these thinkers was Plato, whose ideas about the nature of perception and the soul had a profound impact on medieval thought. In his dialogue, Cratylus, Plato argued that names and images are not just labels or representations. They are powerful tools that shape our understanding of the world. For Plato, the act of naming and the act of perceiving are deeply intertwined, and both involve a creative process of interpretation. This idea of the creative power of perception is also evident in the works of medieval artists and craftsmen. In the 13th century, Paris was a center of artistic innovation, and the city's artisans were pushing the boundaries of what was possible in art and architecture. The Gothic cathedrals, with their intricate stained glass windows and soaring spires, were not just physical structures. They were works of art that aimed to transform the viewer's experience. The stained glass windows, in particular, were designed to capture and refract light, creating a mystical, otherworldly atmosphere that invited the viewer to reflect on the nature of reality. The relationship between art and perception was also a central theme in the works of Walter Benjamin, a 20th-century philosopher who wrote extensively on the cultural and aesthetic transformations of the modern era. In his essay, Paris, Capital of the 19th Century, Benjamin explores the ways in which the city of Paris, much like the garden in Le Roman de la Rose, was a place of transformation and self-reflection. Benjamin argues that the city, with its labyrinthine streets and bustling marketplaces, was a mirror that reflected the changing nature of modern life. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, the role of technology in shaping our perceptions and experiences has become a central concern. The rise of big data and computational technology has transformed the way we think about stability and change, mirroring the medieval debates about the nature of the soul and perception. Just as the medieval scribes and philosophers grappled with the dynamic interplay between the external world and the internal mind, so too do modern thinkers grapple with the ways in which technology mediates our experience of the world. In this age of rapid change and technological innovation, the lessons of Le Roman de la Rose remain as relevant as ever. The poem reminds us that the act of perception is not a passive process, but an active, creative act that involves the transformation of the external world into a meaningful internal experience. As we navigate the complex and ever-changing landscape of the modern world, we are reminded that the power of the imagination is a fundamental aspect of what it means to be human. In the heart of the academic exploration of medieval texts and their variant forms, the work of Bernard Cerquiglini stands out as a pivotal contribution. Cerquiglini's book, Eloge de la Variante, Histoire critique de la philologie, In Praise of the Variant, a critical history of philology, challenges traditional notions of textual stability and emphasizes the inherent variability of medieval manuscripts. This variability, he argues, is not a flaw but a fundamental characteristic of medieval literary production. Cerquiglini points out that the repetitive nature of medieval prose, which might seem cumbersome to modern readers, is actually rooted in an aesthetic of return. This aesthetic is characterized by the joy of repetition and the deliberate introduction of variations. Each new version of a text, whether a slight modification in wording or a significant alteration, is an act of creative rewriting that enriches the text's meaning and context. This approach to writing and reading is a far cry from the modern pursuit of a single, definitive version of a text. The concept of variants in medieval manuscripts is not about producing different versions of a text, but is, in itself, a defining feature of the text. The continuous rewriting and appropriation of texts in the Middle Ages suggests that variance is not an isolated occurrence, but a continuous process. This process invites us to reconsider how we define and understand a text in the context of medieval manuscript culture. For example, the Roman de la Rose, a 13th-century French poem, exists in numerous manuscript versions, each with its own unique features. These variations are not merely errors or deviations, but are integral to the poem's identity. The different versions of the Roman de la Rose reflect the diverse contexts in which the text was produced and read, from the royal libraries of Charles V and Charles VI to the personal collections of individuals like Christine de Pizan. Christine de Pizan, a notable figure in medieval literature, exemplifies the role of the scribe and author in shaping and reshaping texts. Her Livre des Faits at Bons Morts du Sage Roi Charles V, the book of the deeds and good customs of the wise King Charles V, is a testament to the dynamic nature of medieval writing. The manuscript, produced in 1404, is a complex work that combines historical narrative with moral instruction, reflecting Pizan's own views and the political climate of the time. The challenges of editing and studying such variant texts are significant. Traditional methods of textual criticism, which aim to reconstruct a single, authoritative version, often marginalize the richness and complexity of the manuscript tradition. As Elena Pierazzo, a contemporary textual scholar, notes, this approach can give a false impression of textual stability and purity, making it difficult to appreciate the editorial work and the multifaceted nature of the tradition. The variability of medieval texts also raises questions about the nature of authorship and the role of the scribe. In the manuscript culture of the Middle Ages, the boundaries between author and scribe were often blurred. Scribes were not merely passive copyists, but active participants in the creation and interpretation of texts. They could introduce changes, add glosses, and even create new versions of a work, contributing to the ongoing evolution of the text. This dynamic process of textual production and reception is further complicated by the material conditions of medieval manuscripts. The physical characteristics of a manuscript, such as its layout, illustrations, and marginalia, can provide valuable insights into how the text was read and understood. For instance, the Queen's Book, a manuscript produced in Paris between 1410 and 1414 and presented to Queen Isabel, is a richly illustrated codex that showcases the collaborative efforts of scribes, illuminators, and patrons. The study of medieval manuscripts, therefore, requires a multidisciplinary approach that considers the text's literary, historical, and material dimensions. This approach aligns with the broader field of philology, which seeks to understand texts in their cultural and historical context. The work of scholars like Cerquiglini and Pierazzo highlights the importance of embracing the variability of medieval texts and recognizing the creative and interpretive roles of scribes and readers. In the realm of medieval philosophy, the concept of imago similitudo, image likeness, plays a crucial role. R. A. Marcus, in his analysis of Augustine's works, explores how the idea of similitude, as opposed to sameness, permeates medieval thought. Augustine's De Divinis Questionibus, on divine questions, and De Trinitate, on the Trinity, delve into the nature of representation and likeness, influencing later medieval thinkers and artists. Similarly, Umberto Eco's The Aesthetics of Thomas Aquinas delves into the medieval understanding of vision and perception, particularly the hierarchy of the senses and the concept of intellectual vision. Eco's work highlights the intricate relationship between sensory experience and intellectual understanding, a key theme in medieval philosophy and theology. The study of medieval manuscripts and texts is a rich and complex field that continues to evolve with new methodologies and technologies. The digital revolution has opened up new possibilities for the study and dissemination of medieval texts, allowing scholars and readers to explore the vast and varied world of medieval literature in unprecedented ways. As we continue to engage with these texts, the variability and dynamic nature of medieval manuscripts remind us of the richness and complexity of the medieval world. In the early 1300s, the city of Paris was a bustling center of culture and learning. Among its many treasures was a manuscript known as Le Roman de la Rose, a poetic work that explored the art of love and the complexities of courtly romance. This manuscript, housed in the Bibliothèque Sainte-Geneviève, was a parchment codex with 155 folios, though some of the original leaves have since disappeared. The pages were filled with 107 miniature paintings and beautifully decorated margins and initials, making it a true masterpiece of medieval art. One of the key elements of Le Roman de la Rose is the word enclose, which means included or contained. However, in the context of the poem, enclose takes on a deeper meaning. It can refer to a circle or enclosure, and also to a cloistered or sequestered woman, such as a nun. This duality is significant because the character of Rose spends much of the poem trapped in a tower, symbolizing her isolation and the complexities of the art of love that both Guillaume de Lorris and Jean de Meun explore. The manuscript is rich with details that provide insight into the medieval world. For example, the rubric's headings in red ink often offer variant readings and critical information that supplement the poetic narrative. This is evident in the rubric on folio 1VC, which provides a different version of the text. Another important manuscript is the one held in the Bibliothèque Municipale de Lyon, which contains a version of Le Roman de la Rose, along with other moralizing texts, including a French translation of Boethius's Consolation of Philosophy. This collection, copied by Matthias du Revau, offers a broader context for understanding the poem and its cultural significance. The Roman de la Rose is not just a literary work, but also a reflection of the political and philosophical ideas of the time. In the 1350s, another manuscript, MS Dijon 525, was created, which includes a version of the Roman de Lorris and other texts that engage in a dialogue with the poem. This manuscript, copied by Matthias du Revau, is a testament to the ongoing debate and interpretation of the poem by medieval scholars. During this period, Paris was also a center of political innovation. In 1374, King Charles V commissioned Nicole Orsmy to translate Aristotle's Politics into French. Orsmy's translation was part of a broader effort to promote political and social order. Orsmy emphasized the importance of political science and the virtues necessary for good governance, reflecting the ideas of Aristotle, who argued that the best rulers are those with the greatest political and practical wisdom. The concept of policy in this context refers to the art of governing and the organization of the state. Orsmy's translation of Aristotle's works introduced many new terms into the French language, including concepts related to governance, justice, and the ideal state. These ideas were not just theoretical. They had practical implications for the governance of France and the education of its leaders. The library of Charles V was a significant repository of knowledge, reflecting the king's commitment to learning and the public good. The library housed a vast collection of books on theology, philosophy, and the sciences, compiled by the greatest authors of the time. This collection was intended to serve the broader interests of the kingdom and Christendom. In the 1400s, Christine de Pizan, a prominent writer and scholar, wrote a biography of Charles V, praising his love of learning and his efforts to promote education and knowledge. She described the king's library as a testament to his wisdom and his dedication to the well-being of his realm. The Roman de Lorris and the political and philosophical works of the time are interconnected, reflecting the rich cultural and intellectual life of medieval Paris. These texts not only provide insight into the literature and art of the period, but also offer a window into the political and social ideas that shaped the medieval world. Nicole Orsmy, a significant figure in the intellectual landscape of the 14th century, translated and commented on Aristotle's Politics in a manuscript housed at the Bibliothèque Municipale d'Avranches. This work, which is part of a broader tradition of medieval translations and interpretations of Aristotle, reflects the deep engagement of medieval scholars with classical thought. Orsmy's glosses often drew from and paralleled the arguments of Marsilius of Padua, a contemporary and controversial figure who challenged the papal claims to temporal power through his Defensor Passus. Marsilius' work, which advocated for popular sovereignty and a clear separation of church and state, was condemned by Pope John XXII, leading to Marsilius and his translator Jean de Jandun's exile from Paris. Aristotle's influence on Orsmy and Marsilius is evident in their discussions of political and ethical principles. For instance, Orsmy's glosses on Aristotle's Politics highlight the importance of the common good and the roles of different virtues in governance. This alignment with Aristotelian principles is also seen in Christine de Pizan's Le Livre des Faits et Bons Mores du Sage Roi Charles V, which praises Charles V's efforts to create a court culture based on virtue and the pursuit of excellence, or érite. The concept of érite, the striving to achieve one's potential, is a central theme in both Aristotle's Ethics and the works of medieval thinkers like Orsmy and Christine de Pizan. In Aristotle's Eudemian Ethics, érite is discussed in terms of fulfilling one's duties and roles within society. This idea is echoed in Orsmy's commentary, where he emphasizes the importance of virtuous leadership and the creation of a just and well-ordered society. The influence of John of Salisbury, a 12th century scholar who was an early proponent of Aristotelian thought, is also notable. John's work laid the groundwork for later medieval thinkers, including Orsmy, by integrating Aristotelian principles into Christian philosophy. This intellectual lineage underscores the continuity of Aristotelian thought from the early medieval period through the 14th century. In the realm of aesthetics, the transmission and appreciation of art during this period are also influenced by Aristotelian principles. The differential imitation found in manuscript copies, for example, reflects the idea that art should not only be beautiful, but also serve a social and religious purpose. This is evident in the careful copying and illumination of manuscripts, which were not only texts, but also works of art that conveyed moral and educational messages. The synoptic reading of these texts, which combines historical, philosophical, and aesthetic perspectives, provides a comprehensive view of the intellectual and cultural landscape of the 14th century. It highlights the interconnectedness of political, ethical, and artistic thought, and the ways in which these ideas were transmitted and adapted over time. The work of scholars like Orsmy, Marsilius, and Christine de Pizan demonstrates the enduring influence of Aristotle and the creative ways in which medieval thinkers engaged with and applied his ideas to their own context. The chapter concludes with a discussion on the intricate relationship between textual scholars and literary historians in the study of medieval manuscripts. Textual scholars focus on the precise analysis and reconstruction of texts, often creating critical editions that aim to present the most accurate or authoritative version of a work. These critical editions, however, sometimes overlook the non-textual elements that are integral to the manuscript's meaning and cultural context, such as illuminations, marginalia, and the physical layout of the page. Literary historians, on the other hand, are more concerned with the broader cultural and historical significance of the text. They explore the manuscripts as dynamic, evolving entities that reflect the social, political, and aesthetic values of their time. The division of labor between these two fields can sometimes lead to a disconnect, with textual scholars often having restricted access to the physical manuscripts and literary historians relying on the critical editions produced by their colleagues. The chapter emphasizes the importance of collaboration between these two groups to achieve a more comprehensive understanding of medieval manuscript. Digital repositories and tools have begun to bridge this gap by providing access to high-quality images and data, allowing for a more nuanced and synoptic reading of the texts. This approach not only enriches the study of individual manuscripts, but also reveals the broader cultural and historical contexts in which they were produced and consumed. The chapter also reflects on the challenges and opportunities presented by the digital humanities. While there is a bias against humanistic research in some quarters, the use of digital tools and methods is increasingly seen as a way to enhance and deepen our understanding of medieval literature. The integration of computational thinking and critical theory can help to uncover new insights and foster innovative research, ultimately contributing to a more vibrant and inclusive field of study.